by the science of gradualism, and as you can see, a picture speaks 1,000 words, so let's begin. Version 2. I'm the founder of WeThePeopleWillNotBeChipped.com. We're an organisation that basically focuses on the human inventorying issue. We petition governments on a federal level to actually get preventative legislation introduced. We also covered emerging technologies such as nanotech, radio frequency ID, the global information grid, and the current threat that is actually facing humanity, which is transhumanism. And what transhumanism is the merger of man into machine. So it is a group of individuals that basically want to embrace technology to evolve mankind to the next stage. The best way to introduce VeriChip is actually with the advertisement that they actually started about a month ago on US TV. So to introduce the product, I think it's always best to use their propaganda, and here it is.
To think something so small can connect you to everything that matters.
When your life and the one you love are on the line, Rfıd is always with you when every second counts in the emergency room, providing immediate access to your medical records.
Because Bob has trouble remembering all his medications.
Because I'm in love with my kids' kids.
Because my car lost control while driving.
Because now I'm looking out for both of us. Because I have diabetes, but it doesn't have me. Because I spend my life in the ER trying to save yours.
See, and look, this is their marketing campaign. So if it didn't make you laugh, at the end of the day, it's just a ridiculous marketing campaign. But they are in market. This product started airing on actual US TV about a month ago, as mentioned. And this was our brief response. We did a short film called Whose Pet Are You? And it'll actually show... I actually titled it, was quite funny. But anyway, and this is what it is. This is humans being reduced to inventory. So this is it.
Every 6 minutes, a pin is recovered with a 100-gram microchip.
The microchip is a chip about the size of a grain of rice that is implanted under the skin with a hypodermic needle as an injection. And it is activated when the scanner is passed over. It gets energy from the scanner, it's activated, it then transmits the number to the scanner. The only benefit at this point is to identify the dog and return it back to its owner.
It is nice to be able to keep track of our pets, but what about our family and friends?
Applied Digital Solutions could track human beings by satellite.
We are working on a product that we have called internally a PLD. PLD stands for Personal Locating Device, which is an implantable GPS for which our company owns a patent. It can be implanted surgically in the clavicle area of a child or someone that you are interested in tracking.
Whose pet are you? This message has been brought to you in part by WeThePeopleWillNotBeChipped.com.
Did you notice the actual angle that he went to market was with children? So we're dealing with a company that is basically totally unethical. It utilises fear as its motivator. But more than that, there is a body of evidence of how long this has actually been out there. So from Siminoff basically in 1866 all the way to Dr. Jose Delgado in 65, there's just more than enough evidence where I can actually provide this if anyone wants a PowerPoint presentation. But currently we have Alzheimer patients being chipped. How an Alzheimer patient makes up his own mind to be chipped is another question. And then obviously people utilising to actually access nightclubs to pay with their drinks. Now, this is where the aim of the speech is to showcase an agenda at play to mesh you, the person, into the internet as a connected node under the control of a mainframe, IBM, which runs on an artificial neural network, which is an artificial brain. Now, I'll break that down. The person, how you are as a flesh and blood human being, is not how the tech giants view you. They view you as an object, they view you as a product and something that can actually become electronically aware. So what you need to do for this speech is just put aside how you view yourself. They view you as an object and as inventory. When you look at the mainframe is basically something that will run all the information flows, and there's enough evidence that will show that it is IBM. And the artificial neural network is basically a joint venture between DARPA and IBM to reverse engineer the human brain. So you have biological neural networks, which are brains, and they take the biological neural network and basically are mapping it. Within 10 years, they hope to have a full functioning brain in silicon that they hope to achieve full consciousness. So if anyone has watched Terminator with Skynet, that would actually be a good example of where to start. So what we have here is the largest tech company in the world with a closet of with the Nazi regime, and we'll deal with that later, who are basically psychopaths, and we're going to prove that. Okay. Now, the head psychopath, Sam Palmisano, when he addressed the Council of Foreign Relations, he actually went on record to say, indeed, almost anything, any person, any object, any process or any service for any organisation, large or small, can become digitally aware and networked. If you notice how the presentation is, how he actually pitches it, it's person, object, process and service is used in the same context. So you are no better than a process that runs on a software program. You are no better than an object that can have an RFID tag at Tesco. And the goal ultimately is for everyone to be networked. We'll move further and actually prove that from a different angle, where you have the Auto ID Centre, which was birthed from the MIT. So what you'll see is these agendas are always birthed from universities. So the university basically gets seed funding from, either the banking elite, from the multinationals, from the military-industrial complex. They then take that into market utilising predictive programming, where the average populace thinks, look, universities are great for us, they're good for our kids, they've always been good people, so this idea must be good. Now, what the Auto ID Centre, the vision was, is basically where every object, from sewing needles to jumbo jets to chairs to drinks, is basically becomes electronically aware. And how that is done is with a radio frequency ID tag. And a good way to bring that home is every time, like today, I went to Tesco twice, and they said, do you want the card, the loyalty card? I don't want your loyalty card. That's got an RFID chip in it. But that's not the point. The point is it is RFID that will basically make the products electronically aware. So when you look at the program itself, there are enough bits allocated where you can actually prove without a shadow of a doubt that humans are actually on the hit list. So you have got 33 bits would account for every human being to be given an electronic product code that is unique to you. So you can be tracked in real time and matched to algorithms and other programs that basically IBM is developing. But further than that, the agenda is to actually make dust particles electronically aware through nanotech. So what we're talking about, forget about Wi-Fi, we're talking about a web grid where every single object is basically communicating, but the ultimate one to get into the network is yourself, which is the human being. So moving this forward, the other agenda that's driving this is the transhumanist. Now, the transhumanist is basically, when you look at it, it stems from, the first mention of it was from the Huxley family, and we all know what a great bunch of eugenists they were. Human Plus is a group of individuals that basically will embrace technology to actually further their goals as a human being. So whether you're taking a chip or you know, an arm that's made out of graphite, where they want to transcend what's actually considered human to become post-human gods. And there's another agenda within it called strong AI, which is the building of artificial intelligence within a machine that can actually achieve consciousness, where man can then actually pass the baton to the machine, and then the machine from there on goes and develops all products, all ideas and all inventions, where man basically says to the machine, look, we're happy with your invention, let's move on. So a better way of summing it up is when you have people like Max Moore, the philosopher, who's gone on record to say the body's not sacred, it's a pure random accident, and genetic engineering is the most moral thing we can do. That's eugenics. There's no two ways about it. Then I'm in the land of Kevin Warwick. He actually comes from your country, so he has gone on to record to say that cyborgs will be able to outthink the subspecies, which is you guys in this room, and we need to have a right for robots in this world. So, I mean, we can't feed the world. We have people starving and dying. People can barely put food on the table. And this guy wants to have rights for robots. Now, anyway, Professor Hugo de Harris is a more balanced gentleman. He's the guy behind Building Gods, which is it's a more balanced approach to transhumanism. Excuse me. He's actually gone on record to say that this is the camp that actually developed the atomic bomb, and we all know when the atomic bomb was actually being detonated, they were taking bets on whether they were going to blow up the world or set the ionosphere on fire. So nothing has changed. This is the same stable that just wants to push technology for no other reason than to tick the box and to say, look, you know, I've completed my my 2-year contract, and I'll continue to get funding from whether it's the military-industrial complex or from elite families or banking interests. And then don't forget Stephen Hawking, one of the smartest men on the face of this earth. He's got an IQ of 160. He's working quantum graphics in relation to black holes. I mean, I'm just Greg Nikolettos. How can I argue with a man who's got an IQ of 160? But my belief system is that just because he says DNA organisms will eventually evolve into machines, just because a man has an IQ of 160 does not mean he has a shred of wisdom. So now, to the average populace out there and the lay person, we need to understand that these people are viewed as giants as well. So the predictive programming, the pacing and the leading of the population, the familiarisation this is a slick, crafted marketing machine. And when you have a gentleman who's got, you know, a brief history of time spending over 200 weeks on the bestseller list, you know, what's a kid in university going to say, look, I disagree with Einstein? The point is, what needs to happen is, and this is also based on Darwin's theory of evolution, so we need to understand that the way this is viewed is that we are expendable, and you're not viewed as an actual flesh and blood spirit being. You're actually viewed as a stepping stone to a machine, and this is basically dehumanizing at its highest core. Now, the chipping cyborg agenda in media. The Galaxy Rangers. Captain Zachary Fox has got a brain chip. He can fight the enemy, obviously, so much with so much greater skill. The brain chip within the Stepford Wives creates the hive mind, and the hive mind is obviously the conformity to the husband and what he wants. So, you know, by promoting the brain chip, we can obviously have a perfect society. The Matrix is an interesting one. Even though Neo is an actual he fights the Matrix system, he actually utilises brain uploads to actually fight the system. So he is actually a program within the system itself, if you actually want to analyse it to that level. Just quickly, Demolition Man, all the citizens are chipped. Johnny Mnemonic has got a brain chip, existence chipping, and the latest one, from Bruce Willis, which is the brain upload, where one actually uploads their consciousness into a mainframe and then lives this virtual life. So, you know, Greg Nikolettos is a bit bored of, you know, living my life as it is. I'll upload myself as a red-crested parakeet and just investigate that avenue. So, look, from a logical perspective, it's total insanity, but this is an agenda to actually bring the microchipping agenda to you. So it's about the very chip, it's about the brain chip. So all these things might never actually occur, but it is part of a slick marketing campaign for you to actually accept that the progressive stage, or the next progressive stage for man to evolve, is to embrace technology. We didn't have to go to war in Iraq because Cartman actually defeated Saddam Hussein with a V-chip in 1999. The V-chip basically allowed Saddam Hussein to actually be defeated, and it's quite funny that it was actually called the V-chip. So, you know, sounds like very chip, doesn't it? And then you have the humanisation of robots, which is there's a case of they're humanising the robots and then they're taking humans and basically robotising them. So it is a push-pull technique to familiarise yourself with it and to say, you know, maybe Bumblebee can cry. Jetfire shows old age and uses a uses a walking cane, and Mudflap and Skids within the Transformers is basically, you know, black social rapper stereotypes, and they can't even read and write. So the robots are becoming humans, the humans are becoming robots, and actually the Daft Punk one's an interesting one where you've got, you know, robots in a pyramid, so for all those with the symbology side of things, and it's as blatant as the nose on your face. Now, the predictive programming gets very intense, and the Toronto Star actually wrote a great article from their perspective anyway, but I'll just read the few lines. By the time my 4-year-old son is swathed in the soft flesh of old age, he'll find it unremarkable that he and almost everyone he knows will be permanently implanted with a microchip. And, you know, to a group like you, this sounds ridiculous. To the rest of the population, this just sounds as the next logical step. It just sounds, you know, this is coming from the Toronto Star. This is something that could and possibly will happen. Now, what we need to do is actually break down what branding is and what the very chip basically is. What branding is it has always been a case of the master-slave relationship. It has always been to show ownership. The Greeks used to actually brand the slaves with the letter delta, or D for doulos, which meant slave. And it's always been a dehumanising process, and we do it with livestock, and now we're moving obviously to humans. There's an example of someone with a brand that would obviously take the very chip. He's actually branded Intel into his hand. Now, going back to the science of semantics, what does online actually mean? Online actually means to be operating under the direct control or connected to a main computer. So when you are online on the computer, you are just online via other PCs, and you're connected to a mainframe or to the World Wide Web. If one has a very chip, you are basically under the direct control of a mainframe. So what is happening is this gradualization to move more and more of you online, with the ultimate goal is to basically have you with an RFID chip where you are communicating to a mainframe and basically owned. We'll continue with that. Digitize. What does digitize mean? It is to convert data from digital form and to use it into a computer. So what happens is, when they take a biometric of yours, they take a physical measurement, they basically apply an algorithm to it, and then they get a number of your man, which then basically ends up in a mainframe. Now, the lust for data is so much that they want as much biometrics, or as many biometric markers of you as possible, to get the number of your man that is the closest to the physical match that you are. And everyone has seen it. You've gone from retina scans, you've gone to iris scans, fingerprinting, gait, you name it. We'll cover it later. But we're just covering the semantics of the words, because what we're trying to prove, they're telling you what it is. They're telling you what it is. Like the World Wide Web, why choose the word web? So if you need to be meshed into something, and that is part of the plan, like IBM said, that we want to basically connect you into a network. What is a web? A web is basically something that snares, entangles, or traps. When, the Google bot is basically trawling the internet, what do they call those things? They call them web crawlers. So why is it called a net? An internet? What does a net do? It's something that serves to catch or to ensnare. So when you actually look at the activity there on the internet, you could be one of those nodes. And that's the agenda that's been played. Now, how they're doing this, there's a push-pull technique at play where we're moving online. Like 20 years ago, if I said to you, look, you'd be on Facebook and MySpace and have all these illusionary friends and we'd be living so much of our lives online. 20 years ago, that would sound like science fiction, but it is science fact. Where it's moving in 15 or within 10 years, and we'll cover that later, is we will actually be able to emote feelings over the web. So you'll be able to emote hate, love, sadness, and people will actually be able to pick that up over the web through sensors and technology that's coming up through, basically weaved into clothing or into the architecture. So what it comes down to is, as the bandwidth of phones increase, like 3G, and the Apple iPhone will be a major accelerator of this technology, you'll find apps like augmented reality, which is the picture just down at the bottom, and then 4G will allow so much bandwidth that you'll see applications that will absolutely rock your mind. And look, I'm not a technophobe. I've worked for Apple and for Xerox, but as a person who likes technology, technology now has basically is starting to become an enemy. And you need to, even if it's not for yourself, you need to understand that you need to engage with your children and your grandchildren, because they are being sucked into this net. Pull techniques. How do they pull us into the net? Willingly. Facebook, Friendster, Twitter, Dig. Everyone wants to be famous these days. They want to, show, what they did on the weekend. There's enough evidence to show where the seed funding came from Facebook and from MySpace. Most of them are CIA funded. The classic case is these guys started in a garage. How many times I've heard that story? It's just driven me mad. And it's always the guys that start in the garage that end up having $10 billion companies. So anyway. Now, with the very chip, I won't spend any time on this, but there is a right to private life and human rights. It is a violation of at least 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the UN. So even though I don't really appreciate the UN, I appreciate them on this one. Okay, now this is where IBM, and to be a spoiler, IBM owns VeriChip at the end of the day. They have a distant relationship which will show, but IBM was basically founded in 1896 by Herman Hollerith. It was an actual census company. From there on, once it got the census contract with the US, which it continues to have today, except the US citizen now gets to have his front door GPS as a favour. What you're seeing there in the middle is the tabulating machine. So that was basically the first computer, in a sense, that allowed for software programming. So what would happen is you would have the Nazi regime basically coming to IBM and saying, look, what we want to do is have a racial census. We want to have occupations put on, locations, inventory, stock, and IBM would then basically create a punch card, very much the software engineering right now, where it's an application. They've come back with a software product that meets their needs, And as a result of that, with the processing of 64,000 cards per hour, the tabulating machine was actually, it was possible to locate, let's say, all the homosexuals that were living in Poland that happened to be carpenters. And with that information, IBM, utilising obviously, you know, the railway system that was also run on the punch card system, could obviously meter out the undesirables with far greater efficiency. Now, to bring this into perspective, the Hollerith machine could process 64,000 cards an hour, and look what was possible with that. The Blue Gene processor processes 22.8 million computations per second. Okay, so keep that in perspective. It's out of control. The smoking gun as well is IBM, even though they deny it, we work closely with a gentleman called Edwin Black, who wrote IBM and the Holocaust, and if anyone wants a bulletproof expose on how the IBM regime conducted themselves, they have no response. So the information company has no response. They've lost all the details. But, you know, that's what you expect from psychopaths. The machines were leased as well, so it wasn't a case of IBM basically sold the machines to the Nazi regime and said, look, you know, you do with them what you want. It's a case of they actually leased the machines, and they made their money from creating new tabulating cards. So it was very much a hand-in-glove relationship, and the relationship extended from 1933 to 1945. So there were over 2,000 machines out from, you know, Auschwitz to, you know, all the other death camps. And it wasn't obviously only Jews, regardless of, you know, the debate of how many people actually died. The fact is, it was an event that we can utilise to our advantage because history is repeating itself. There was also other censuses undertaken, including the cow census, livestock, horse, and the Danes. The next time you meet some Danes, they were the butter hoarders. So Hitler busted them and they had all the butter, but anyway. So for the symbology people in the room, not much has changed. There you have the Hollerith, seeing everything with Hollerith punch cards, and when you actually look at IBM, it does stand for I-beam as well. So exactly the same game. Now, what is radio frequency ID? The actual dictionary terminology, without getting involved, is basically it's a small radio transponder or a tag. It's read through radio frequency, which can actually be through a portal scanner or through an actual handheld, and it actually stores data. So the RFID chips, and you'd be seeing them nowadays as well. Some of you might not actually identify them, but Tesco is always a good place to start, simply because they've forced their suppliers to use RFID. Is, you know, if you buy clothing, you'll see something that looks like an anti-theft device, but it's not. It's a radio frequency ID. So every time you go to Tesco and they say, do you want the loyalty program, what they're saying to you is, we want to track you. That is what they're saying. Okay, what is RFID? There's some variations of it. It was invented in 1948. Verichip is a radio frequency ID device, obviously. The Hitachi Mu chip over there in relation to the ant, and that's how small it is. And it gets even smaller, and there's been some conspiracy theories out there, just that, you know, the RFID dust is actually in vaccines, but that's not true. That's just those are conspiracy theorists, those guys. Now, what is the Verichip? The Verichip is the only product that is designed to go into a human. It is basically glass encapsulated RFID microchip. It has got a patent number, and it is FDA approved. Initially, when it was first released, it was used for accessing your medical records, which it still is. It can actually be used as a payment device through VeriPay, and also to control access to secure facilities. The history of the product, started Destron Fearing. If any animal is tagged out there with livestock, it comes from Destron Fearing. The technology was then sold to Hughes Aircraft. That went to the Hughes Identification Devices division, and they worked on the plan, the same plan as the Darwin theory of evolution, that if we define an animal as a mammal, then this would of course include humans. So what I need to stress through this is you're always being reduced to livestock in this. This is the game. It's to dehumanize you as a human, as a flesh and blood being. It is to make you either a robot or an animal. Those are the choices, the way it's going. Now, when people go, oh, you know, it's the Verichip, it's you know, there's nothing wrong with it. Raytheon manufactures it, the 5th largest defence contractor in the world. So here you have the company that's making the Tomahawk missile is making the Verichip. And then IBM's invisible hand, seed funding it from 1999. Okay, how do we prove, and there's another symbology one for the symbology guys out there, Verichip, that looks like Lord of the Rings, doesn't it? Anyway, IBM financed Verichip in 1999. They had a $95 million loan, a credit line, and IBM decided to write off $65 million for a $30 million once-off payment. So you tell me which finance company writes off $65 million. Ridiculous. Also, when the Verichip is actually demonstrated, it's demonstrated in the IBM Experience Lab, so that showcases very much a hand-in-glove relationship. And the FDA approval, you basically had Tommy Thompson, who worked for President Bush, which is no surprise. Within 5 months of actually getting the product approved, he was on the Verichip board of directors. He had cashed in over $80,000 and had acquired over 266,000 shares in Verichip and Applied Digital Solutions. And that's what we know. So make up your own mind. Now, this family was actually the family that actually birthed the movement, We the People Not Be Chipped. When I saw this, and coming from the IT field, it just sickened me to my guts. When you had, I want to be the first kid to be implanted with a chip, and this was on TV, and then you had these people as though they were saving the world, and then we later found out that they were on the payroll as well. I sat back as an individual and I just went, is this the time when man starts rioting and says enough's enough? And to be honest, what happened is everyone went back to sleep and just bought a bigger plasma TV. And anyway, it got worse. Time for Kids picked up the story, and Time magazine's obviously, a very controlled publication, and they went into market. Derek Jacobs may be the first kid to be chipped. Isn't he cool? Now, what we need to understand is this is being pitched to your children and to your grandchildren. Like, you might not get chipped. It's the next generation that they're aiming for, and within the next 5 to 10 years. So people need to take an invested interest on this on all levels and on all generations. Now, computer prodigy Derek Jacobs died at 18 in a motorcycle accident. And I don't want to trivialise the issue, there was a death involved, but it showcased Verichip did nothing. Verichip didn't save the kid. He had a motorcycle accident, the universe is hostile, and the kid died. So for all the parents out there that want to microchip their daughters, to stop them from, being attacked by pedophiles, the chip does not solve the inherent issues that man has. Like, you inherently have good people and you inherently have evil people, and you inherently have bad, not inherently, but some days you have bad luck. Anyway, moving on. The target markets for Verichip, basically everyone. It starts with, there's actually a Facebook campaign that has got more users than our group does, which is to put a satellite tracking chip in all pedophiles. Now, I've actually contacted the lady, And I said to her, how's that going to stop a pedophile from attacking a child? I said, it doesn't actually solve the mental issues that the pedophile has. And she was of the opinion that he could be GPS tracked and before he attacked the child. Anyway, see, but this is the problem we're fighting. Unless we understand the technology, how it's been presented in the media, it's presented as the magic bullet. It is presented through the media, and we've been conditioned to think, you know, James Bond has a microchip. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for everyone. The illegal immigrants, the Alzheimer patients who can't make up their minds have chosen to get microchipped, even though they forgot they got microchipped. The illegal immigrants, every time there's some Mexicans coming over the border in Texas, Verichip releases a press release that they can solve it. And if you're in the military, we're getting a lot of emails from the military, simply because we need to understand that Raytheon actually has the contract, or it produces the Verichip. So you're one contract away, basically, from having, you know, the dog tags, the dogs of war, basically being tagged like dogs. Another play on words. Anyway, government workers, and I can say anyone dependent on the state. If this becomes mandated, if you're dependent on the state, it's going to be a tough road ahead unless preventative legislation comes in. Now, this is when Verichip basically became a two-trick pony. They signed a deal with a company called Receptors, and what Receptors is basically introducing a pathogen receptor component to the actual Verichip for glucose sensing for diabetics, and also for other biological threats, including the H1N1, SARS, you name it, basically. So what would happen is you get the microchip installed into you, or surgically implanted. The diabetic, rather than actually pricking himself 5 to 6 times a day, he just scans himself once and goes, this is just great. Apart from the fact that he might get cancer, but that's another issue. We need to understand on how this company is going to market. It's going into market in so many demographics, and it is funded by IBM, so it's not going away. There's a glucose sensing component, and how it works is the sample is presented, it goes through, if it's a virus, depending on which virus it is, it goes through another loop, another checkpoint if you like. It then says it's clear, and if it's not, it can then go to, I like the way they've got H, X, and Y, because Baxter must obviously be making some new variations in the lab as well. And then you have SARS as well. So what you're looking at, you're one deal away with the World Health Organization and the CDC to actually have a product that can solve all of man's woes, from payment. Okay. Where's it moving to? Tying your financial records, credit monitoring and reporting. So, you can actually, where Verichip is going, they're adding more services to the actual product. So you could go for a job, you have a Verichip, they go, well look, let's query the services that you have on the Verichip, we'll check your financial report. They also promote identity, prevention of identity theft as well. And then a national criminal database monitoring and background search. So when you look at it, this is becoming a product that is offering so many services that a government could say, look, this can solve all our issues. But more than that, it is something that is totally invasive. The question we always get asked is, can you be tracked off satellite? Not right now. The Verichip, basically the antenna in it is too small to actually be read. They are working on the personal location device, as Scott Silverman mentioned in the beginning. That would have to actually be a much larger chip. But we do have 29 low Earth orbiting satellites called, from the Orbcom, that once the Verichip is out there, well, you won't get lost and you can throw away your nav man because they'll know where you are. Okay, how does RFID work? This is IBM at play. You walk into the store, they assign you a number, they see where you walk. This is based on the RFID products that you have on you. This person was lazy, or what's happening? There he is. Here we go. Now, he's breezing or just looking at the window. He might have no money. He can't afford to go into the store. And all this information is being collected on you without you even knowing. The patents are there. There's the patent 2002, 1065, 758. And what will happen is, once you have payloads, actual sensors within the flooring, if someone is overweight, what will happen is eventually the RFID will communicate that the person who's walking is overweight, and then the prices of chips or any product that makes one fat will actually increase, because the data is all going to be correlated and communicating with each other. So what it is, it's about finding out exactly who you are, monetizing you, and basically reducing you to an income stream. So that's IBM. Now, barcodes. This is radio frequency ID on steroids. When this came out, it actually floored me. It comes from the same camp by MIT, which brought us the RFID. It can store 1 million times more data than a similar sized barcode. But the thing about the barcode is it doesn't actually require a battery to be read. It basically utilises the measuring brightness and angle of light rays. So what that means is a camera can actually read it at a distance. Now, where the global surveillance all comes in, all CCTV cameras can then track all products that have barcodes. You then have a total web of surveillance. And if you went out and spoke to the average person, you could go query 100,000 people out here in London and no one would have even heard of a barcode. So we wonder why the CCTVs are out there. Anyway, how does a brown coffee cup work? Greg buys it, he throws it, it travels along the line, I dispose of it incorrectly, the sensors pick it up, it ends up in the wrong landfill area, and then I get issued a fine. Because I didn't actually know that Starbucks had put an RFID chip in my cup. And these are real world applications that are happening. Okay. I don't know much about the Tories, but I do know that they're a UK party. And this is another case of moving us online. So with Obamacare and the like, there's this push to, take your health records and move them online. Now, why do they want to move them online? The reason is they can actually monetize it. So if they can find out your ailments, if you're a depressed person, we'll pitch Prozac to you. So you'll find your Google keywords will have Prozac and the rest of it. And then there's this illusion that there's this competitive war between Google Health and Microsoft Health Vault. There is none. It's two companies. They've got a share of the pie. Regardless of who gets it, you're going to end up on one of those. So once your medical records are basically online, from there on they can actually be then sold off to insurance agencies. So things that are confidential under doctor's oath, basically, once they're online, they're not. That data is basically then sold off to insurance companies that can go, okay, well look, Greg's got a bit of a heart problem, I think we'll raise his premiums, or we just won't insure him at all. And that is why Obamacare, he cares so much, because there's so much to gain. How it works, just quickly, you've got Google Health, which sits in the middle, and then you can see the employers can query the database, the doctors, the hospitals, the insurance, and then obviously the VeriChip. Now the VeriChip is actually Microsoft Health Vault approved product, and it will probably be a Google approved product as well. See, what we need to understand is it's an FDA approved product. So that can mean obviously most, like for example in Australia you've got the TGA. The TGA will easily look at what the FDA has done and basically embrace that. Who brought us the barcode? Oh, it's IBM again. Basically created in 1971 and started being used in 1973 in the military. The difference with the barcode is it needs to actually be scanned one at a time and can actually only give you one number. Let's say, for example, for a can of Coke would have the specific number and that's it. Where it gets now to the electronic product code, they've now assigned enough digits where every can of Coke that comes off the actual production line can be given a unique number. So every product that can be manufactured, as mentioned, from sewing needles all the way to jumbo jets to grains of sand, can be individually numbered. And then once those products are actually networked and become digitally aware, I mean, you could be sitting in a room here with 50 products that got RFID in them and you wouldn't have a clue. All I would need to do is install a port or choke scan, or like a scanner as one leaves, and then I would have a good indication of what products one has on you. And what there needs to be is legislation for a right to know. If there's an RFID tag on a product, you have every right to know, because if you don't know, that information is going to be used against you. Like, I mean, I'm sure Jackie Smith with what her husband bought, anyway. Well, that actually made all the way to Australia, but that's not the point. I mean, if that was tracked, that's my point. If that was tracked, right, which is normal transaction, an RFID product is actually alive from where it's manufactured all the way to death, basically. That really covers what the other slide actually did, but just to drive it home, 33 bits assigns all humans. Now, the other thing as well is once a product becomes electronically aware, it has its own web page. So to give you an example, let's say that speaker had an RFID chip in it, right, with an electronic product code. I could actually query it and say, where was it sitting, what was it doing, who touched it, to the point where you have the whole life cycle of the actual product. And we won't have access to that information to actually query it like the top elite guys do. The point is, why should they care if I bought a can of beans, what I'm doing with my can of beans? It's just, I just want to eat them. That's where we're at right now. We're basically at the smart sensor network stage. So RFID has been around for quite some time now, and we're moving now to a point where even most people don't even know it's basically embedded into products and the like. I won't spend much time on that, but this is the Internet of Things. So what the Internet of Things is, we're currently on what's called Internet Protocol version 4, and what Internet Protocol version 4 is a certain amount of IPs, which is Internet Protocol, let's say numbers. It's like real estate. So if you have a web page, you have an IP for that, blah, blah, blah. So what they've done is they've created more numbers so they can actually move all products onto the internet. So when you look at the 2005 to 2008 web diagram over there, you can actually see as more and more products are added, so and so the mesh network basically becomes more complex and more populated. And don't forget that the human beings are part of that as well. Just quickly, Adam Greenfield from Nokia, I'd recommend his book called Everywhere, if anyone wants to study Internet Protocol version 6. The guy is actually, even though he's in the industry, he's totally concerned about the 128-bit address space, where he said there is enough address space for IP that we can actually give an IP address to dust particles, right? So, I mean, where is this moving to? So a grain of sand will have its own web page. Okay, back to IBM. they just recently released a product called IBM Breadcrumbs, which is an app, and the iPhone will bring a lot of this to the actual market because it is a personal computer at the end of the day. And once it actually moves to 4G, what you would do is you take your phone, you hold it up to the electronic product code, which is actually in your supermarket. It then tells you the summary of the ingredients, when it was manufactured, if there was any product recall data on the, the peanuts, how long has the product been on the shelf, and in enough time, who bought it in, in your particular area. So that's just too much information. I mean, realistically, I don't need to know that. But it's not that I don't need to know that. It's like IBM doesn't need to know that. That's the problem. Okay, we'll discuss ambient intelligence, and this is a pull technique into the internet. It basically, you've seen smart houses and, environments that you come home and you've had a bad day and you want to drop a red wine, so it pours you the red wine, puts on the mood music, and there's always the benefit. Now, when there's a benefit attached to it, there's the reason the environment is actually responding to you in context is because it knows about you. So the more the environment can actually respond in context and deliver you the right service, it's because it has correlated data and basically sapped information from you to deliver you a service that, do you really need it? Like at the end of the day, I might not want wine when I get home. I might want whiskey. So that's a bad example, but my point is I don't need my environment to tell me what to do, how to do it, and to predict what I'm doing. It's like I'm a human being. I have free will, and I'm not going to get to a point where I'm living in a world where there's these embedded sensors predicting, analysing, plotting my moves, and then pitching services to me so they can actually monetize me, like the Minority Report, which is another predictive programming, Tom Cruise. Now, if you had a Panasonic toilet and you were on parole for drugs, you're stuffed. What it can do is basically analyse your fecal matter and then send the data to your doctor. So I hope you have friends that can go to the toilet for you. There is another one from Panasonic which has got a heat sensor, and as soon as it sees you enter into the toilet, it assumes that after you've gone to the toilet, you want a cup of coffee, so it boils the jug for you. And then there's, of course, the no homeless person left behind, or all homeless people left behind. It's basically a park bench that monitors the angle at which one is sitting, loitering, so it's got a time sensor, an angle sensor, and if you're loitering, well, it ejects you. And this is happening. This isn't science fiction. This is happening. Panasonic products with sensors. See, and all the women in the room will go, "This is great." I mean, I won't spend any time on it, but you can look it up. How lazy. I mean, God's sakes. Lift the trash can, See, and this is the benefit approach, It's like... Ian's actually selling them in the... Okay, augmented reality. It's a pull technique. It is basically virtual reality at the end of the day. What it does, it overlays data into our real world. So what it comes down to is you'll have your iPhone app and other applications as well, which will tell you, let's say, for example, where your closest pub is, more information on, let's say, a museum. So these sort of applications are very service orientated, and they actually do provide a service. But the thing is, what we need to understand is that they are pulling us more and more into the net. Now, augmented reality is actually, it's moving so fast. I actually changed 2 slides today just for the presentation. So bring this up at your next barbecue, you'll be way ahead of the curve, I'll tell you that much. Just bring up augmented reality, you'll sound really smart. You've got different apps. You've got Chris Angel. I know there's a new song by John Mayer as well that uses augmented reality. Just YouTube that. But we'll show you an example. Now, when you're watching this as well, just view this from the hive mind cyborg agenda of creating perfect worker drones. Terminator glasses.
Release 2 screws.
See, it's pacing him as well on how quickly to work.
Next step. Remove intake duct.
Now, if you're a mechanic and you work for BMW and you don't know this, you should be sacked.
Next step. Offset fly.
Okay, enough of that. Okay, this one was just today. This actually, imagine you're a kid, how cool this is.
Denial is your new link to the world. Place 3D objects into the real world. Make your reality more dynamic. Share the new reality with everybody. With augmented reality, dinosaurs still walk the earth.
No, they don't. It's not reality. This is the point. It's a lie. They're trying to pervert what is reality to mesh it
Learn
into
more
a
about
virtual world.
places in a completely new way just by being there. Janio knows the neighborhood, even if you have never been there before.
See, the average person would just go and investigate what is actually in the city, you know. Okay, enough of that. Okay, just quickly, how it all works is basically you have a body sensor network, person-to-person interaction, environment interactions, object-to-sensor interactions, so everything is communicating with everything, right? So what they're trying to do is basically make everything electronically aware. How will this happen? You have new technologies, Epoch headset for Harry Potter game. I don't know if any of you have children that play World of Warcraft. Well, they're doomed. The next version of that will start having the emoting over the net. So if someone steals your +20 Vorpal blade, you can then emote rage that he has stolen your treasures, and that's where it's moving. Now, what we need to understand is this demographic will take this up. There's not a doubt about it. And it is predictive programming to then get you used to the next stage, which is the brain chip. You've got the HAL suit, and Japan's obviously, they've always been very pro-technology. We mentioned this, this is a Sensei project. I mean, look at the companies behind it: Siemens, Mitsubishi, Ericsson, IBM, SAP, Nokia. there is this perception in the market that you've got these IT giants and they're all like Google's fighting Microsoft. No, they're not. They're not. They all work together. There's some contracts that they do compete for, but at the end of the day, the contracts are really given to the company that has the most proficiency in it, and they work. I mean, I don't want to use the word New World Order, but there is a New World Order in the tech giants. They're the ones that actually operate above governments. So IBM, for example, to give you an idea on the sensors, the IBM has the sensors for the US, they have the sensors for Australia, and they have the sensors for Communist China. So you tell me whether that breaks down any barriers between countries. You have a company that operates above countries. Okay, brain chips, telepathic chips, sex chips, and the soul catcher. MindFlex. This is predictive programming now for the brain chips propaganda that's coming through. And look, and this is not to say that this technology can't be used for good, but it won't be, because it's in the hands of the military-industrial complex. The military-industrial complex will never strengthen the populace. It never has, it never will. So until I see Mother Teresa Incorporated start releasing products like this, I'd say don't go anywhere close to them. Oh no, this is really good as well. I'll try, hang on. That should have worked. Anyway.
And he's going to show me how to control something with the power of my mind.
That's right. It's MindFlex, Chelsea. MindFlex is a game, or the object of the game is actually to move a ball through an obstacle course. But what's unique about this is that you move the ball with the power of your mind, as you said. That's where this headset comes into play. There's 3 different sensors on this headset. One that's going to go... can I put this on you?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. One goes against your forehead.
Watch this.
And you can feel that right there. Okay, excellent. And then 2, clip onto your earlobes, making quite a fashion statement. Focus and concentrate on levitating the ball, because these sensors are going to detect your level of concentration, your level. That's what's going to move this ball. So focus, concentrate. With your free hand, if you can reach up to this dial. That's okay, we'll get it back. Reach up to this dial. Try out this dial. Give it a good turn. See how it feels. Okay, great. That dial is going to move the ball horizontally on the track, okay? But it's going to want to disrupt your focus. Don't lose focus, okay? All about concentration and coordination. So concentrate, lift the ball. Good. Now turn it, turn the wheel, turn it. Now try, now don't lose focus. Concentrate. Oh, look at this. Yes! In the obstacle. Well done.
Okay, let me just go. There's the Soul Catcher by your own British Telecom. Great name. It's a brain chip, basically, that's records all. Look, it's one of those things where when we look at it from our movement's perspective, we don't know whether things like this are actually true, realistically, because it's got a release date of 2025. But if they manage to pull this off, realistically, it would be a case of, like in the Matrix, where the baby's born microchipped, controlled from birth, and functions as a drone within a hive community to serve the hive. There is no individuality, there is no autonomy, there is no free will. Now, the Neo-Luddites, which were a movement within the textile workers that actually originated in England in 1811, they had the balls and the guts to basically go and destroy the machinery that was displacing them. Here we have companies that are basically hunting you and hunting your family and your lineage and your next generation, and the average person does nothing. It's just... Anyway, sorry. Carry on. There's a sex chip. Now this will have major uptake. My friends will buy one. Anyway, I'll let you read that because I want to laugh. Are we done?
Does it roll over and snore after?
Yeah, it does. No, that's the upgrade. You want the last line? So, okay, look, there was a lady who was actually implanted with it, right? Now, here's a lady that could have permanent orgasms, and she removed it. So, there must have been a conflict, realistically, you know, on an ethical or moral. I mean, I don't know the lady, but but most people, you know, quest for orgasms, and she said no, I don't want them. So something had happened that was on a far deeper level as well. We need to understand that. Okay, the biometric harvest. This is a push technique. We don't want to really give out biometrics. What have we got? Face recognition, eye, iris, retina, fingerprint, finger geometry, hand geometry, voice, signature, gait, typing, DNA matching, ear, odour. Where do we go to next? Knee biometrics. Private parts are coming up. I kid you not. Actually, remember me, I'm quoting this one. I'm going out on a limb, but I predict that.
Two main axes.
Okay,
continuous.
Hang on. Okay,
two main axes. Two main axes. Continuous, robust.
Okay, what is happening now? We're moving from external biometrics, right? So there is this lust, as mentioned, to get the number of your man. So the more biometrics markers we have, or indicators we have of you, the better the match in the mainframe. So where it's moving is it's actually moving to internal biometric markers, and
two main axes.
What's
continuous,
this?
robust, and non-obtrusive authentication.
So it's continuous, so that means you're under constant surveillance.
And validation of nominal physiological initial state and monitoring of the physiological state of the user before and during the execution of safety-critical tasks, so as to prevent risky situations and minimize accidents that are due to human errors. The Humadia approach is to fuse novel and emerging biometric modalities with existing advanced biometric techniques into a multimodal biometric platform. One of the main objectives of the project is to study the potential of physiological biometrics that describe the person's internal rather than external physiology for the person's authentication.
See, note it says all can be faked. So when Jackie Smith says to you the biometrics that we're doing with IBM, she's lying. They're all lying. It's a case of this. It's never enough. Your external biometrics aren't enough. And where's it going after this? It's going to functional MRI, which is brain scanning. But if we listen to Tom Mitchell, who's a master of doublespeak, he said it's not mind reading. It's thought identification. Do you feel better now? So anyway, John Dylan Haynes, he's not a bad guy. He actually said, look, they're going beyond mapping the line. They're actually reading intentions. So what they want to do is they want to fuse you to the point where, as Greg Nikolettos moves from point A to point B, are my intentions good for the system? And it's a military-industrial complex system, right, where what they want to do is ensure that as I move from point A to point B, the movements I make are not a threat. Now, where it gets scary is the algorithms eventually will actually be done by artificial intelligence. So the machine will dictate. And how that is evident is when you actually see what is happening now with Afghanistan and Iraq. Most of the bombings are now being done with drones. Do you know what I mean? So there is this desire amongst these psychopaths to basically build robot warriors. So there is this desire amongst these psychopaths to basically build robot warriors. Anyway, it goes further. Robert Paul Root Walp basically said they're trying to develop a new beam of light that would be projected onto your forehead. It would go a couple of millimeters and into your frontal cortex. Anyway, blah, 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 and then we could use that as a lie detection device. Now, what that's actually spawned as well is a field called neuromarketing. Now, neuromarketing is where they read your mind covertly to find out your buying patterns and your buying intentions. Now, all the major manufacturers are behind it, and what they're saying is, look, we can bring a product to market quicker, cheaper, and more effective for you because we can read your mind. Like, what a bonus.
Every day.
Okay, this is extremely important. This is extremely important.
Every day, we generate 8 times the information found in all U.S. libraries.
Where does it come from?
Store transactions, market movements,
emails, photos, videos, blogs.
What if technology could capture all this information
and turn it into intelligence?
We could identify patterns faster.
We could predict with greater confidence.
Convert data into actions.
Smarter information means smarter decisions.
Smarter decisions build a smarter planet.
That's what I'm working on.
I'm an IBMer.
What's IBM doing?
Nafanya kazi IBM.
Let's build
a smarter planet.
We've actually changed it. We're doing a parody on it, which is I'm an IMer, which is International Enslavement Machines. So we'll have that video out within about a month. But anyway, you have WebSphere sensor events. Now, what WebSphere sensor events is basically the software program that will manage all the information flow. So what happens is in your country, I don't know whether you've got the smart grid, let's save the planet and reduce your energy expenditure. So what happens is you invite this company to actually monitor your energy usage. Is that happening here? Yeah. Well, guess who that is? Correct. It's IBM. So here you have a company, right, to go to the next stage, where the sectors they want to dominate and can dominate and will dominate is aerospace defense, automotive, banking. They do 97% of all banking SWIFT. All transactions that go worldwide through clearinghouses is through IBM. Chemicals and petroleum, consumer products, education, electronics, energy utilities. What's missing? I don't know. Anyway, if you can instrument the items and offer software solutions to manage them, you control the flow of the following industries as IBM has stated now in literature. So what you have is total and utter control of all information and product flows operating above all world governments. So what you have here is you have a company they are larger than the UN. They are running the globe. Now, the Genographic project. You always need good cop, bad cop. IBM partnered with National Geographic and went around collecting DNA from people to basically find out the human migration. And of course they said this is going to be used for good, and but to me it sounds like a really good platform for eugenics, doesn't it? Now we go through to the next step where Google has actually got a company called 23andMe, which is seed funded by Google. Now, it goes down to the whole biometrics, the lust of harvesting you into the mainframe. So when IBM actually released the DNA transistor, where they could actually bring down sequencing of a genome down to $100 from the $3 billion it initially cost, what you have is you basically have the ultimate biometric marker for you. So once we have your genome sequence, we have you. It's as simple as that. Now, as mentioned, these are the Nazi war criminals that are working on this project. Eric Green was honest enough to say, it is a digital code, and now that we have the code, the fun stuff begins. Don't forget Project Checkmate, lovely name. What they do is they take 80,000 blue gene processors, basically put the flu into as a computation or and they mutate it. They have various algorithms, and they basically work it out and say, look, we'll throw this variable into it. What would happen if, you know, India got the swine flu, right? What would actually happen to the airports? And then what they do is they then build the models and plug in other variables, including, well, what happens if we give more Tamiflu? Will the actual flu mutate more and more, and will it become, you know, the virulent strain that will actually kill? So what you have here, and look, I'm a big believer of semantics. They're telling you this is Project Checkmate. I mean, this is Project Checkmate. They're not doing it. After the last speech as well, it's certainly for not vaccines, but anyway. It is actually for vaccines.
30% of the data stored on the world's computers will be medical images.
The trouble is, all of that information is trapped.
X-rays aren't talking to...
Medical records aren't talking to...
Patient histories aren't talking to...
Insurance forms.
We're trying to connect all that data, make it smart.
We would see the patterns in your medical history.
In the histories of entire populations.
Predict dangerous drug combinations.
We could tailor cures
to your genetic code.
Put the focus...
Tailor cures to your genetic code.
That's what I'm working on.
I'm an IBMer. Let's build a smarter planet.
Okay, now, the major lie that is coming from the transhumanists and from human plus people is that for mankind to evolve, we need to put microprocessors in our brains, right? Meanwhile, in the back end, what they are doing is they basically are working on reverse engineering the item that's in your head right now, which is the human brain. For them, it is the holy grail. They hope to have actually achieved a human brain or a photocopy of it in silicon, which is you're taking a biological neural network and creating it in an artificial, say in silicon basically. And the hope behind that is that that will actually develop consciousness. And the consciousness that it will develop will basically be the decision maker that will make all the decisions for the military and will make all the decisions based on all this information that's been harvested through the radio frequency ID. Now, the next stage, once they've actually reverse engineered the brain, what they want to do is crack the holy grail, which is the algorithm of thinking, basically, your software for your brain. So what has happened is mankind has taken for granted how special we really are. Like, we are unique individuals at the end of the day. We've been sold this lie that computers, you know, yeah, computer can process faster than me. We're infinitely more powerful than computers will ever be, right? And what they're doing is they're doing the bait and switch. They're offering us a pogo stick at the end of the day, right? And there's a spacecraft that we have. There's no comparison. Now, listen to this psychopath, please. And look, what he does, what he says, there's some honest interviews with him, and how he distances himself from the philosophical question. He goes, I'm just an engineer, right? Like, because I'm an engineer, I just do my role, and I might destroy the entire populace, but that's what engineers do.
Is cognitive computing, which is about engineering aspects of mind such as emotion, perception, sensation, cognition, emotion, action, interaction by reverse engineering, and then to deploy this technology by connecting it to vast array of sensors, billions, trillions of sensors such as sight, hearing, taste.
So a machine that thinks like a human.
But even going further to non-biological sensors, sensors, for example, monitoring the forest, sensors monitoring the oceans, sensors monitoring people, animals, organizations, homes, cars, and to stream this vast amount of data in real time or near real time to a global brain. They can
He said it. When he said that,
large-scale
that for us was just a eureka moment, because it's never been said.
Sensory overload, and to act and respond to this data. So the quest is cognitive computing.
Sorry, that's an overload. Okay. Now, let's go one step further. Operation Kitty Hawk. They want to run the entire internet as an application. So, just quickly, all the data stream would just be like putting Windows Vista into a machine. So they own the internet. Now, me coming from my background, that boggles my mind. It boggles my mind. But we do know that you need at least 67.1 million cores, and those cores are computing 22.8 trillion computations per second. Okay, what is the goal? Okay, it's not good. IBM works with the military-industrial complex at the end of the day. It is a fusion of companies. You've got HP, Boeing, DARPA, Lockheed Martin, IBM, right? What it is about securing full spectrum dominance over all global information flows. And you are a node that they want to basically... Okay, they want to create you to be a node, so they basically have full control over your movements. So it goes further than that. It's basically dominating the internet and the users on it. So what I predict will happen in the future is you'll be locked into a particular IP, and as we're moving with laptops and the like, you know, with biometrics, and you've got your camera over there, you'll have to actually log on probably with a driver's license, because the internet will actually be viewed as a traffic highway that needs to be regulated, right? And it wouldn't take much. I mean, you've got the Snow, I think it's the Snow-Rockefeller bill in the States, which gives full control over the internet if it's a cyber terror threat. Now, back in our home country, Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister, who attends church every Sunday, he basically is internet filtering for the children, right? Now, I'm a father, I have a 4-year-old son. If he ended up with porn on his machine, it's because I'm a poor father, right? That's it. That's the way it is. It's got nothing to do with the children. It's got to do with information flows and what they want you to see and what they don't want you to see. So what it comes down to is what we have now is there's a small window of opportunity to actually get the information and to make it happen, because there are agendas at play that all it would take, and I'll give you an example. Our website, when I was at the airport, was actually banned. So we could not actually access the We the People site because there was some keywords on there that they didn't like as an actual filter. In Australia, you had a company called, or you got WikiLeaks, and what WikiLeaks actually does, I recommend that site, is they actually showcase what's happening around the world for internet censorship. When the WikiLeaks website actually showcased what the Australian government was doing, the Australian government then banned WikiLeaks. So, on what grounds? Like, there was no pornography, there was no, you know, pedophilia, and at the end of the day, it's just another lie. So, there's too much to go through there, but when you look at it, I mean, it's a case of moving to a censored environment. Obviously with the artificial intelligence, CCTVs, unmanned air vehicles, things like that big dog jumping up there, Pet Man, it just doesn't end. Now, the brain upload, which is the transhumanist way of actually getting you to basically upload your consciousness, which is another eugenics program. So think about it. I go in, upload my brain. I can't even get Windows Vista to run properly, right? And I'm meant to trust, right, and I come from that background, I'm meant to trust people like me and like mates of mine on help desks that when I upload myself, I go, hey man, it's just, I can't find myself. I'm lost. So, do you see how ridiculous this is? It's just ridiculous. But it's not that. I mean, here you have, and I mean, I'm not, you know, if there's any transgender people in the room, I apologise. But Martine Rothblatt is a transgender lady, right, okay? So I'm not going to, right, take advice from someone who's basically transgender and telling me to turn into a machine. Sorry, it's just not happening. And I'm not taking advice from Iranian religion either, who basically wants us to upload for human cloning to achieve eternal life. What I say is, you do it first, right? And I'll help, I'll fund it. Okay, we are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your biological, technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. And that's exactly what it is. They're trying to assimilate you into a hive mind to basically be a drone. What is at stake? It is everything. Your individuality, your uniqueness, your autonomy, your independent thought and your free will. But the one thing they can't take from you, look, they can rape and they can take your biometrics, they can steal your DNA. The one thing they can't take that has to be handed into the mainframe is your free will. That's it. That's all they want. And all I'm saying is don't give it. Thank you. Thank you.